works for Lacuna, they're almost like godlike if you look at that, because you go to these people and you say, can you help me? And it's like you have to talk to Dr. Wurtzak.
Mearswiak.
You have to talk to Dr. Mearswiak,
Mearswiak, yeah.
and that's Tom Wilkinson. And basically, it's almost like a confession that
It
you
is.
have to give. You have to tell him all of the details of why you want to delete this memory, right?
Yeah.
And then you get all the physical belongings or anything that reminds you of this person, and you give it to these people, and they're going to, magically make it go away.
Yeah.
But what you also have is that the people that work for this organization, not all of them are serious about their work.
No, and they're kind of like, this is kind of something we've talked about before,
Mm-hmm.
is like how bad it feels like when you go to somebody that you have to trust
Right.
to do something, and they're just like regular people who aren't really that good at their job.
Right.
It's like, oh, I have to go to like a psychiatrist to get help with something. This is actually an experience I've had. I went to a therapist. I needed to talk some issues through, and the person just wasn't very good at their job.
Yeah.
And it made me feel like there was something wrong with me, and I'm supposed to be trusting this person with my, deep, intimate information about myself. And they're kind of like terrible psychotherapists.
Yeah.
And you had that too.
Oh, sure, I have.
Around the same time as me, actually.
It's crazy. And when you have these people that you need, and it's like, you're just kind of like, give me an oar, get me out of the water, I'm going down. And they're just kind of like, yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
You
I
know
mean,
what
like, my experience was that I was experiencing a grief process, and I was talking to the psychotherapist, and every time I would get emotional, the person would just tell me to stop and just stop talking and start breathing. And I mean, not everybody listening to this podcast knows me, but talking is my way of dealing with emotions. Like, I have to kind of intellectualize things and talk through them so that I can understand them. And her thing was always just like, no, you have to stop talking, stop intellectualizing. You just need to feel this in the moment. And honestly, all I felt was pissed
Yeah.
at this person for stopping me from processing what I was processing
Yeah.
to do some stupid, exercise that she thought was going to help me. And your situation was also a grieving situation where you were going through a loss and you were explaining it to the person, and it was almost like too much for them to handle because they were
Yeah.
getting upset.
Yeah. Well, it was just a situation where they couldn't remember what I was talking about, and they just didn't really have any real interest in working with me. They told me about like group therapy sessions that I could go to. They like recommended other things that I could do, and my time was really poor. It really turned me off. And I was very fortunate because on the East Coast of Massachusetts, I had a therapist for like, I don't know, like 20 years. And she was fantastic. And I just, I didn't find a good fit out here.
Yeah.
And
And we still haven't. I mean, we kind of just gave up.
Yeah.
And we're like, I guess we'll just talk to each other. So, like, it's just, it's difficult because you want to trust these people.
Right.
You should be able to, but they are just regular people, or not even quite as good as regular people.
No.
And it's very frustrating, especially in a medical setting or like, mental health setting, because you are looking for help. And that was kind of the situation here.
So the thing that I want to bring up is that when we actually see the first time we see Stan, right? And that is Mark Ruffalo in the office. He's with a patient, and she has this apparatus on her head, and she's screaming at the top of her lungs, and she's crying. And he doesn't care at all about her pain.
It's just par for the course.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, hey, good to meet you. My name's Stan. I work here. Yeah, it's just trash.
It's basically an MRI machine. Like, the thing I kind of also like about this movie is that the science fiction is kind of very light on the touch. Like, you're not going into like a really clinical scientific explanation of what's going on.
No.
It's like, they just put your head into an MRI machine or a CT scan machine. I just had this done to myself for my sinuses like a week ago. It's the same thing, but a small version. So they put you in this machine. They're taking a picture of the inside of your head and showing you objects that remind you of the person, and that lights up parts of your brain, which allows them to create this map to go in and erase what they need to erase. This is not a real thing, but I love that they didn't even bother. It's just fully accepted that you can go to this really low rent office, kind of a nightmare looking place, in my opinion.
It looks like an apartment.
If I went to a doctor's office like that, I would be very nervous.
Oh, yeah.
And, they check you out, whatever. And I kind of, one of the things that really stuck out to me this time is when Joel is talking to Dr. Mierzwiak, he's like, so this doesn't cause like brain damage or anything, right? And Dr. Mierzwiak is like, I mean, well, it kind of is brain damage because basically they're destroying parts of your brain. So I don't know about you, but if I went into like a kind of a not super organized, clean office that seemed like it was just a bunch of barely out of their teens people doing important, work on people's brain.
Yeah.
I might choose to run the other way, screaming.
Well, you would have done the right thing. I mean, there's not any question with that.